gear shift on the car. Our flex fuel we're not using, but we do have VTEC fuel, VTEC spark. So these two last areas we need to go and set up. Let's do that right now. So jumping into my fuel table, we're going to find that we need to redefine the fuel table here based on throttle position, not on manifold gauge pressure. This would be relevant if you're forced induction, but being that this is naturally aspirated with a relatively large throttle body, we can map it throttle position based, which works out pretty well. And then we can find the top axis here is based on engine speed at the very top. And then we have our fuel table 2. So the fuel table 1 is going to be used for our low cam operation. That's non-VTEC. Fuel table 2 is going to be used for high cam. We need to go and set up some details in order to configure this properly. So what we're going to do is jump into our aux7. This is the configuration details for the VTEC to work to turn that output on. Now we skip this when we were doing our output setup. We're going to do it right here and take care of it. So the function, we see GP output, general purpose output. Label here is VTEC. The off timer, let's leave it at 0.1, that's fine. Switch logic, we're going to be setting this up on 2 logic conditions. We could go up to 3, but we're going to go here and set it up on condition 1 and 2. So we do have some other options here. It has to meet both conditions. We can do a condition 1 or 2 or 3, condition 1 and 2 or 3. There's going to be possibilities. When we have to do the condition 1 and 2, it has to meet both conditions for the output to work, which is what we want for VTEC here. So let's go and click OK. The switch condition 1 here, I'm going to call this first one engine RPM. So we're going to say engine RPM is greater than, and we're going to set this to what we want our VTEC activation be based on engine RPM. And I'm going to go and change this to 9,000 RPM. I want to turn my VTEC off so I can map out my low cam first. Then we'll go in and figure out the VTEC point and map out our fuel table 2. Switch condition 2 here, we're going to set this to throttle position. So throttle position is greater than, and we'll set our throttle position right now to 50%. So we have to be above 50% throttle and a certain engine RPM, in this case 9,000, which we're not going to get to in this getting up and mapping out our fuel table 1 here for the low cam operation. But that'll be something useful. Now we do have a third condition that you could go and refine this even more. You could do it based on map pressure, and you could set your based on your conditions 1, 2, and 3. But I'm not going to do that right now since it's naturally aspirated. Engine RPM and throttle should be sufficient in order to make this work. So you could also do your condition based on coolant temperature if you wanted to block out your VTEC activation up to a certain coolant temperature. That might actually be desirable here. Let's actually do that. So we'll say ECT is greater than, and let's say ECT greater than something like, let's do maybe 100 degrees. That should be fine. And then we'll change our conditions here, condition 1, 2, and 3. This is actually the way Honda does it. You have to be above a certain speed threshold, you have to be above a certain engine coolant temperature, and then above a certain engine RPM, and then a certain map pressure range. They actually have a couple different conditions, but these 3 conditions should work. The driver type is going to be a high side. We're actually going to be sending a high side out, not a low side. Low side would be grounding. High side's a 12-volt out, so we'll send a high side for VTEC activation. We'll do Control S here and save that. Now we need to go and configure the tables. Actually, we have one more step here. We need to go and turn on our table 2. And we want to make our table 2 activated when our aux7 here turns on or the VTEC becomes active. So table 1 is tied to non-VTEC. Table 2 is tied to VTEC operation. We're going to have to unlock this real quick. We're going to jump here into ECU settings. We're going to go here into our fuel corrections. We have a dual fuel table option. We're going to go and double click dual fuel table, which is going to bring up our dual fuel table down here in our screen. Dual fuel table mode, we're going to go here and set it to dual table, not overlay table or not interpolate between. We want it to either be on one table or the other. So we're going to say dual table. And the activation here is going to be on the status of our aux7, which is VTEC, turning on. So we're going to say here, the option here, aux7. That's going to be turning on our table 2. So table 1 is low cam, table 2 is VTEC. That's pretty simple. Let's lock this here. Let's switch it back to our conditions and let's lock our window. Now let's deal with our tables here and set this up, configure them for throttle position and for the engine RPM that we're going to be having appropriate for the particular, the speed or the operation we're going to be at. So low cam, we're not going to go out to something like 9,000 or 8,000 is probably the highest I would go. And on high cam, we're not going to have VTEC dropping in at 1,000 RPM. It's going to be at least 4,000, 5,000 RPM. We can go and define these tables here a bit differently. Also, the values in the table that we're finding, these are going to be a VE or model mode, volumetric efficiency based. These values aren't relevant. We need to go put some reasonable values in here to get the engine fired off because these values are way too low. So let's do our first thing. Let's change our tables up. Let's click X here. And in the values, I don't need to have my breakpoints going, you see 750, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000. Let's get rid of 750. Let's move up here and let's get rid of 8,000. We're only going to go up to about 7,500. So low cam, we don't want VTEC going in and not having our VTEC operate at something like 7,500. That's hard on the rockers. It actually can break our rockers. I usually keep my VTEC, or try to have my VTEC coming on way before 7,000. So table will go out to 7,500. That's fine. On our y-axis here, we want to do this based on TP main or throttle position main. That's going to allow us to do alpha end style tuning. Let's do TP main. Let's click OK. Now we're going to get rid of...
Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.